Do you know that the heart of America is in the state of Missouri, in a town called Hartville, a town of 600 people located around 200 miles southwest of St. Louis? The 2020 census revealed important information about the current state and future status of the demographic shift in our region. So to help us understand what this means for our region, we chat with Ness Sandoval, Associate Director of SLU, Co-Director of the Ph.D. program in Public and Social Policy, and the Director of the MA Sociology program at St. Louis University. We'll be right back with more in Breve, right here on STLTV. Ness Sandoval, welcome to En Breve.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I want to dive right in because we have a little bit of time to talk about this very important issue that is the Census 2020. And what did the Census 2020 reveal to us?
That the majority of the population growth in the United States is coming from individuals who are self-identified as racial minorities. And 51% of the population growth at the national level is from individuals who self-identify as Latino or Hispanic.
Latino, 51% of the population.
At the U.S. level.
At the U.S. level. And is that population, how old is that population? What the statistical information?
What's amazing about these demographic transitions is the Latino population in the United States is a very young population. So when we look at age is one of the key characteristics that we look at across all groups. We see that the Latino population, the largest cohorts are from 0 to 4, 5 to 9 cohorts in terms of its structure. When we compare this to the white population in the United States, we have cohorts from 56 to 59, 60 to 64. So try to imagine this in yourself. If I put the modal cohort, it's going to be a toddler for Latinos, and it's getting somebody that's white that's getting ready to retire. Try to imagine that's what's happening across the United States today. Those are the largest age cohorts.
And that's the shift that's happening. What does that mean for the city of St. Louis and for the St. Louis region?
It should be a wake-up call, because although the city of St. Louis did experience an increase in the Latino population, in fact, in terms of absolute numbers, it was the number one population that grew the fastest. However, the number is relatively small. So for a city for a region, we'll start at the regional level and at the city level. For a region that's ranked number 21 in the United States in terms of population size, we're actually in the 80s in terms of Latino population size.
80s? In the what
like 84, we're ranked number 48. So that means there's 83 cities, 83 regions that have a larger population of Latinos than the St. Louis metropolitan region.
So do you see the opportunity that we have in hand?
There is opportunity for St. Louis to become a top 20 region again. But the way it's going to become a top 20 region again is that it's going to rely on the growth of Latinos and the growth of the Asian population making up that difference. Because the region is not growing among whites. The other point from the census is that for the first time in modern census history, the white population actually experienced a decline. And so we have two stories here. We have a white population where 100% of the decline is from whites under the age of 18. And then we have the Latino population, which is making up 51% of the growth. And the largest components of the Latino population are 0 to 4, 5 to 9, and then we even go to the third one, it'll be 10 to 14.
So when you say that the white population under the age of 18 has declined, that means that there's no babies being born? Or
well, it's
what
a net
does
decline.
That mean?
One possible explanation is that individuals pre-20, we go to the 2020 census, if if they had a white father and a black mother, they might have just said, I'm white. And so we know that same individual in 2020 may say, well, I'm multiracial.
Oh.
So that's one possible explanation. But I think another possible explanation is that we see that fertility rates are declining. And so the number of white babies being born has been going down since the 2008 recession. And so I think a lot of demographers, when the recession happened in 2008, said this was temporary and the fertility rates would come back. I think everybody was surprised that they didn't come back. In fact, every year since 2008, the fertility rates have declined among the white population, to the point now, and this is a sensitive topic, to the point now that more whites are dying than are being born in the United States, and in several states, it's already happened.
Okay.
And so this is a very sensitive issue for a lot of people, because it is saying that there are tremendous demographic transitions that are happening, because we studied the past to understand the future. Okay. And so part of what I'm trying to convey to you today is it's not about the future in 2025 or 2030. As a demographer, we're trying to understand what the United States is going to look like in 2060, 2070. I'm trying to give you at least one perspective that if we continue on this change, these are demographic transitions that happen. We can't wish them away if people want to. Two of these transitions are natural. You're born, that's a demographic fact. If you die, that's a demographic fact. If you move, we can measure that, if you're moving from one state to other states. So two of these are biological. You can't wish those away. And so what we're seeing today actually started in the 1980s. The seed, we talk about planting seeds. What we're seeing in the 2020 census, that seed was planted in the 1980s. So it took about 40 years. We saw it in actually 2010, to be honest with you. It took 30 years. We're really starting to see it now in 40 years to really start to see like 51% of the growth for the United States is Latino.
Is Latino.
Yeah, but go back and look at what happened in the 1980s, right? So when I say look 40 years forward, look at 2060 now and understand what that tidal wave means.
So the shift that's happening and how the population, the white population is dying and the younger population of Latinos keep coming up and the implications of that. What are the challenges when you're trying to explain to a group of people that this is happening and the opportunities that we may have here in the region? So
I think the biggest challenge for people to understand is the concept of population momentum. And so the way that I try to tell people or explain it in a non-mathematical way is driving a car. So imagine there's a car that's driving 70 miles an hour and they hit the brakes immediately. The car doesn't stop. The car continues to go. That's momentum from the speed of the car, right? And then if you have a car that's going 15 miles an hour and you hit the brakes immediately, there's still some momentum, but it comes to a stop fairly fast. So that's what's happening in the United States, is that we have one population that's driving about 70 miles an hour, and we have another population that's driving about 5 miles an hour. And that's just the reality of what's happening in the United States. Now, of course, that 70-mile-an-hour car is going to be going down because fertility rates are also going down for that population. But what car is going to stop first? Well, we already seen it in the 2020 census. That 5 mile car has come to a stop, and it's actually going in reverse now. And you have this other population that's based on the 2010 census that's still going 70 miles an hour. And guess who's driving that car? It's 5 and 10-year-olds. And the one that's going in reverse are 60-year-olds. So that's how I try to explain this, because there's a lot of math behind this, but that's how I try to get people to understand that there are two different demographic transitions. There are multiple ones, but the Latinos are now the second largest population in the United States. And so when we think about what 2070 looks like, we're not talking about numbers of 63 million to 200 million. We're going to be talking about two populations in absolute numbers that are going to be the same size. And we can see this already at the state level. Latinos are getting ready to become the largest population in the state of Texas. They may even be California. That's going to be a very significant moment in demographic history because the state of Texas is a very important state. And we see this in other cities in Texas already, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. San Antonio is already Latino majority. Houston will become a Latino majority region. Dallas is set to be that way. These are major American cities that are going to be Latino majority cities. And we kind of think of Los Angeles, and it is, but you're going to see these other cities emerge on our radar screen. And we're like, how did this happen? Nope, why didn't nobody tell me about this? It's happening and it will happen. There's one fact that I like to share with people. In 1 year, more babies are born in Houston than the entire state of Missouri.
More babies born in Houston
than the entire state of Missouri.
So do you think that there's the reason why we're seeing such a political dysfunction right now, it is affected by the fact that maybe people in positions of as a public servant, they know what's coming?
I don't think they do.
Okay.
Because I think when people think about the future, they're thinking 2025. They may be thinking 2030. But if you try to ask them to articulate what St. Louis will look like in 2050, nobody really has a good understanding, or even they're not even in the right ballpark of what a possible future for the region looks like in 2050. And so I think so when people talk about the future, they're talking 2025, 2030, especially politicians, because they're concerned about being elected. As a demographer, I'm not interested in politics. I'm interested in what will the population look like in 2075. And if you want to go out and do an experiment, what I encourage everybody to do is go out to a school and go to a kindergarten class, because these are children 5 years and under. Ignore everybody else, but go out to one of these classes, and that's the future of America. And I encourage either go to Rockwood or Parkway school districts and just focus on that kindergarten class. And you're like, that kindergarten class is demographically different than my 60 to 64-year-old seniors who are exercising. And they'll get it. We have lots of segregation, so it's not every school has this. But there are a handful of schools in St. Louis County that I would put up to any public school in Chicago, Houston, New York, in terms of the racial diversity, the composition of the population. And so we have it here in St. Louis. We have the future of what the U.S. is going to look like. We have small pockets, but we can see it. And so I encourage people to go out and say, I'm not going to be around in 2075, but my child is going to be where I'm at today. He's going to be 50, he'll be 54. So I'm a little bit younger than him, but he'll be 54. And so that's going to be the model image of what the United States is going to look like, is what that kindergarten class looks like. And it's Indians, it's Mexicans, it's Chinese, it's Filipinos. It's an array of people, and they're speaking languages. They're excited. They're embracing diversity. They're speaking Spanish without even knowing they're speaking Spanish. One of my youngest child, he's always coming home like, we can count to 10. I'm like, do you know how amazing that is, that a 5-year-old in public school, that this is an activity for them that's not being taught in class, but the kids themselves are encouraging each other to speak in Spanish.
That is a good opportunity just to speak multiple languages, but what other opportunities exist?
There is an opportunity for us to reimagine what the profile of the region looks like. And if we are to really understand that these trends are not going to go away, and if the St. Louis region wants to reimagine itself as a top 20 region again, it needs to imagine itself of having a Latino population that's at least 500,000. And so that's a pretty big change, right? Because we're just slightly over 100,000. And so there's an opportunity here to think of St. Louis as 500,000 Latinos. If we had 500,000 Latinos, we would be back in the top 20. We'd be like number 17, number 18. It's not impossible. Louisville has a larger Latino population Nashville. Nashville has a larger Latino population than St. Louis. It's 800,000 people smaller than the region. So there's opportunities for the region, for regional leaders, businesses, to say, we don't have to sit back and have a laissez-faire attitude and saying it is what it is. We have to decide we want to be part of this fabric of the growth that's happening at the US level. And yes, we have a very large, the two largest populations in the region are white and black. That's a demographic fact. But you know what also is a demographic fact? That whites and blacks are leaving the region. So we have to, as a region, we have to keep our white families and black families here, but we're not gonna grow at the rate that Dallas is growing, Phoenix is growing, Houston's growing, Atlanta's growing. We need these other components of the mosaic, and that's Latino population and the Asian population. And yeah, they're growing, but we need hundreds of thousands of people, not 10 or 20,000, hundreds of thousands of people to make St. Louis their home.
Ness, thank you so much for coming over to being here with us tonight on Breve. This was fantastic. I know we cover a lot of information in a very short amount of time, so I hope that we can continue this conversation.
I would be happy to continue the conversation.
So thank you again. So keep it right here on STLTV, but before I go, I just want to say that if you want to follow Ness Sandoval on Twitter for more information about demographic shifts and changes and all the stuff that he is doing to promote the fact that we have a Latino community that is thriving, that is growing, and also other populations too, go to Twitter at @YByTata or YByTata, or visit him at his website at jsoslu.wordpress.com. Keep it right here on STLTV. Este es Gilberto Pinela. Me despido. Hasta la próxima.